Hello, everybody. This is Micah Lieberman with Scope. And once again, I'm talking to somebody interesting who is doing something that I think is important in the world of clinical research. And coincidentally, introduced to me by our buddy Craig Lipset. So, everybody, this is Sunitha Malepati with the Buffalo Initiative. And the reason we're connected is Craig and I and some other folks did, and I spoke to Nasha Fitter last week, coincidentally, did a panel at Scope about patient-led drug development broadly. So, Sunitha, this is kind of where you live. So why don't you tell people what the Buffalo Initiative is first before we start chatting? And thanks for signing up for this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Micah. I'm excited to be chatting and love Craig and Nasha. So big fans of theirs. So appreciate the connection there. So the Buffalo Initiative is really trying to build kind of this end-to-end virtual enterprise for patient-led drug development. So we know that patient communities are the largest drivers of impact in rare disease drug development. And what we're trying to do is basically enable their success with not only capital, but the virtual kind of infrastructure they need to drive drug development forward to trials and ultimately approval for their conditions.
Okay, that's perfect. Obviously, you've said that before because you're probably out there talking about the Buffalo Initiative a lot. And that was a perfect summary. And they are the biggest group, they're the key group. So obviously, by definition, rare disease has smaller populations. Often some of these assets just don't get developed. So I think I know the answer, but I want to lead to it. So tell me the why. I think, you told me what Buffalo Initiative is. It's early days, but this is a vision you've had for a long time. So tell us more about the why, and then we'll talk a little bit more about not how, not as it relates to Buffalo Initiative only, but to these patient communities in general. That's something Nasha and I talked about as well. So tell me, or tell everybody out there, more of the why.
Yeah, so I'm an attorney by training. I had no intention of being in this space at all, but it all started after my daughter, who's now 7, was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition caused by a change on a single gene. It's a rare disease called CACNA1A related disorders. And so when we were given the diagnosis and basically told there's no treatment on the horizon, there's no company working on a treatment, like basically go home and do what you can therapy wise for your daughter, but there's nothing that we can medically give her at this point. I entered the world of drug development, rare disease patient advocacy groups, and what they were doing. And I've been really fortunate to be the vice president of the CACNA1A Foundation over the last 5 years and getting a like front seat view as to how all of this works and the incredible work that patient groups are doing in this space to advance drug development for their communities. And what you see over and over again is these groups are fragmented. They're doing work on their own specific gene. It's highly inefficient. They're fundraising on the backs of their own communities often. And it's really hard. Drug development is hard enough, right? But like they're trying to do it without any of the infrastructure or capital that pharma or biopharma has. And in some ways, like this work is incredibly heroic and people are getting to the finish line, but not enough of us are because of these immense hurdles. And so when you look at these diseases, some of them can be grouped to develop synergies to make clinical trials and to make drug development kind of more efficient and more connected, and we can sort of start to develop synergies and patterns and understand sort of commonalities between these diseases. And so our first focus area is neurogenetic conditions because we believe that there are, similar endpoints and outcome measures that we can develop for these diseases, master clinical trial protocols potentially for these diseases. And so can we sort of start to build out a virtual enterprise model that ties together all of the pieces that these patient groups need to drive drug development forward. So we're working with external partners to essentially connect the dots between a promising proof of concept that folks find in an academic lab and really bring them through all the way to what they need for toxicology and manufacturing and clinical trial design and all the way hopefully till approval. And we're doing it in a portfolio approach so that we can start to bring together some of these economies of scale and efficiencies that we need to speed things up, to hopefully at some point make it cheaper to do and make it more just generally feasible for patient groups to drive drug development in areas where there's no commercial interest at this point.
That's amazing. And also there is this incredible amount of passion, people who are committed, right? I mean, your story is incredible. You have incredible commitment and you're doing something. But I think one thing I'm hearing is that those inefficiencies matter. As you said, drug development is hard in and of itself. And some of these big pharma companies have been around for a century, and they have a lot of institutional knowledge and processes in place and things like that. So if you took the bucket of neurodegenerative diseases and you said, hey, we're going to try to find what are some of us working on in parallel? How can we help each other? There might be a small community, a big community, different levels of maturity, right? So that's kind of a form of knowledge sharing, but you're doing more than knowledge sharing. You're trying to put in processes and systems, and that will gradually get smarter. I love the word crowdsourcing, but I think it's overused. But some of the work that I do is related to, like, I don't know the answer, but instead of finding it, hasn't somebody already done this? And can we figure out how to save each other time? I'm better at this, you're better at that. So I don't want to make it sound simple, because it's not. How many communities do you think, is there a certain number that, hey, we've reached a critical mass in this first bucket, let's figure it out. Then somebody else will with that portfolio approach, then maybe we'll get our teeth sharpened on this, make some mistakes with a certain number of partners. Is there a certain number, or does it not matter? Does it at the beginning? I don't know if you have that answer, but there is that point where, oh my gosh, we have too many people and we're unable to really manage the information for this first experiment. As we figure it out, let's get 5, 10. I don't know. Have you even thought about that, Sunitha, or is it too soon to ask that?
No, I think it's actually a really great question and really insightful question. I think that every single program, there's a ton of learning to be had for the successive programs, or, the programs that are falling behind. Like, there's so much learning that happens from a single program that can be applied to programs, that are parallel. And the problem right now, at least on the patient-led side, is all the sharing of that learning is happening anecdotally. There's no systematic way to sort of make sure that the CROs you're using are getting up to speed on all this level of expertise, because they're contracting with single organizations on their one project. But if they're contracting with Buffalo and they're going to take a portfolio of our programs together, you start to build up institutional knowledge of how to drive these programs forward successfully. And I think, you referred to NASHA in the beginning of this. NASHA's group, the FOXG1 Foundation, is actually driving forward their own gene therapy for their community. And there's so much to be learned from what they've done right, and what they've learned that if they were to do it again, what could we apply to other programs? But all of that knowledge sits within one organization, and she will freely share it with us. But how do we make that more systematic? And then how do we actually embed the partners that she's used to develop that gene therapy, to have them go ahead and repeat it again with the next disease or a portfolio of diseases, and so that we can improve the efficiency and learn from those mistakes time and time again? Because at the end of the day, these patient groups, they don't care about making this information proprietary, right? That's the one great thing about them. They just want this treatment in their patients, right? They're not holding on to some special data that they're going to go sell. They're willing to pay it forward. And so we should create a forum for them to be able to do that.
And one more question is looking at some of these organizations, some of them might be 200 people, some could be 200,000, depends, even in a rare disease, smaller number of families, you might have over years, quite a few people, including the physicians, investigators, caregivers, people sharing knowledge. So these organizations might be small, they might be large. Certain things they can share, as you said, they're not trying to hold on to their data. They're willing to share if we give them processes and tools to be able to do that, which is what you're doing. go one step further. I don't know. It's just my own curiosity. If we're looking at like a biorepository, a tissue bank, things like that, do people, do pharma, do CROs, does somebody pitch in money or resources to enable that? Because all of a sudden this becomes operational where you have a group of families saying, what? I have to, I'm gathering tissue samples from 25,000 people throughout the world and it needs to be stored somewhere. This is complicated stuff. Like, are there like, I know we talked about funding, but like, do you end up finding partners? I think Nasha had worked with Charles River Labs. I don't know how it works. I'm just curious. That's such a small sliver of what we're talking about, but I'm curious.
Yeah, that's the kind of the whole virtual enterprise model or the shared infrastructure or whatever you want to call it, like bullpen of
Yes.
services.
Okay.
We're not recreating the wheel. We're just tying together all the partners that are doing one piece of the drug development process and actually building an end-to-end system. So like if there's a biobanking partner out there, like we're not building our own biobank, we're just partnering with them. If there's a company like Charles River that's going to do the toxicology studies or the dosing studies, we're just partnering with them, but we're actually partnering them with Buffalo and saying, you're going to agree to be a partner of Buffalo and you're going to be one of the service providers.
Channel.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. All right. That's awesome. We'll talk again. I think I even told Nasha, I think next month, Nasha and I are talking more about like a patient side of it, kind of what it means to them. But I think these types of conversations, I think the people that I know at Scope, I have a kind of a diverse group of people that are all interested in trials, but I think it's more industry centric. And I want more advocacy groups. I want more of these disease communities to know about my industry people. And I want my industry people to know how to work with these people and connect them, some of this stuff is just happening in parallel. So anything we can do.
Yeah, because I think we're both doing different types of drug development, but there's certainly learnings that should be crossing over to both sides based on what we're seeing and learning from our in-depth knowledge of our patient communities. And likewise on the industry side, there are certainly things that through trial and error and immense experience that we could borrow for our communities as well.
Shared mission. Everybody has the same goal. All right, Sunitha, thanks for hanging out and chatting with me. I knew you had no idea what you were getting into when we got connected. So thanks for being game.
Thanks, Micah.
All right. Bye, Sunitha.
Bye.